I was wrong about silver. At least I made a critical error in my last video, which I will go over, but in the process, I uncovered a conspiracy which goes deeper than I ever thought. Let's get into it. SD Bullion is giving away a monster box of 2024 Tree of Life silver coins. Sign up today at sdbullion.com/sweepstakes. Thank you so much for watching. I do sincerely appreciate it. If you want to learn more about investing in precious metals, or if you just want to watch awesome videos about gold and silver, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Okay, first up, what was the error in my previous video? I'm sure many of you have seen it. I was disgusted about something going on with silver. Let me break it down. Let's start right here at the US debt clock. Now, I'm sure this is a website that many of you are familiar with, and I've heard a few people, at least down below in the comment section, mention that we don't know who's running this website and what their motivations are. So that's something to look into in a future video. But there was one thing in particular that caught my interest on this website, and it is this number right here, the precious metal reserves for silver totaling over 18.8 billion. Now, I wanted to know how they came up with this number, so I reached out to US Debt Clock, and I'm sad to say they have not yet responded to me. However, an industry insider did respond to me and let me know that this number here is actually not referring to above ground reserves. This is actually silver which is still in the ground and has yet to be mined. So it's interesting that they just call it precious metal reserves and they offer no further explanation, but it is good to know this is not referring to silver sitting in a stockpile somewhere, but rather most of it is still underground. And this is really important for what we're talking about and what I was talking about in my previous video. So now we get to this research paper here. And yes, I did show this in my previous video and talk about some concerns I had surrounding this particular research paper, mainly the numbers they are using for silver reserves, because they are making a big claim. They're saying that solar panels could use up 85 to 98% of all of the current global silver reserves by the year 2050. This is pretty crazy if it's true. So naturally, I wanted to look into this further, and it led me to this citation here, the US Geological Survey from 2022. Now, if you don't know, the US Geological Survey is put out every single year, and they have a report which is very lengthy. Let's look at it. Now, here is where we get to my big mistake, the thing I was wrong about. I started on page 153, and I assumed the reserves they were referring to were in thousands of ounces, but in fact that is not correct. If you go up to page 152, you can see the data is actually in metric tons of silver. So my calculations were way off. And they explain down here that a metric ton is actually 32,150.7 troy ounces. So if we do the math, 530,000 times 32,150.7, we get a number exceeding 17 billion ounces of silver in reserves. This is the number that the study was going off of, not the 530 million, which I had assumed it was. So now when I look back on this study, I actually think it is somewhat accurate. The numbers they were using for the amount of silver reserves are close to what we see on the US debt clock. And in fact, if we look at the USGS mineral commodity summaries for 2023, we find the amount of silver reserves have actually increased to 550,000 metric tons. So it's going up. And just for clarification, when they say reserves, they're referring to that part of the reserve base that could be economically extracted or produced at the time of determination. So this is silver that is underground and could potentially be mined out of the ground with the technology that we currently have. So if mining technology increases from year to year, this number should be growing. And if we do the math with the up-to-date 550,000 metric tons, you can see it's around 17.6 billion in available silver reserves. Although I will say that number is still smaller than the 18.8 billion that they show on the US debt clock, but it is much closer. In fact, if we add that number to this number right here, which again is the known amount of silver in above ground inventories, we get, are you ready for it? 18.9 billion ounces of silver. So I'm not sure if that's what they're doing on the US debt clock, because until I hear directly from US debt clock, I simply don't know. And I have to assume that this number is referring to silver that is underground and not yet been mined. But be that as it may, as I went through all of this stuff, I uncovered something even more crazy. I have spoken with an industry insider who works for a company which used to have ties to the World Silver Survey. However, they severed those ties in the mid-90s due to a fundamental disagreement on how the data involving above-ground silver inventories is portrayed in the World Silver Survey. I will now show you the conspiracy. This is the data which is in question, and it shows the above ground silver stocks, or the identifiable silver bullion inventories. We're going to come back to this word right here, identifiable, but they do show you which inventories they're actually looking at. And according to this data, in 2023, at the end of the year, there was about 1.2 billion ounces of silver in these identifiable inventories. However, there is a major flaw with this data, and had I not put out that previous video, I likely would have not learned about this flaw. And the flaw is there is one massive identifiable inventory that they are not including in this data. And you know what that inventory is? It's the silver that I have stacked, the silver that you have stacked, the silver that everyone around the world has stacked and is in their own private inventories. What about that silver? Is this identifiable? Is there any way to figure out how much silver individuals have stacked over the years? Well, there actually is. They literally list the numbers right here. We just go up a few pages and we can see physical investment. This is the silver which is being bought up by stackers around the globe, and it should be included as an identifiable above ground inventory. Now we know the silver is not all in one place, so sure, this is many small private inventories, but still we have the data right here. Last year, 243 million ounces. The year before, 337, 284, 208. I mean, you only got to go back to COVID to see 1 billion ounces of silver that have been stacked. This is silver that is available above ground. Now, I know you're thinking, okay, well, I don't want to sell my silver. It's actually not available. But let me ask you this. What if the world did run out of silver? What if the price of silver spiked so high it surpassed that of gold? I mean, there have been times in history where silver and gold were actually traded equally. So what if silver exploded in price and it went from $30 an ounce to, say, $3,000 an ounce? Would you be willing to sell your silver at that point? I can bet that many stackers around the world would be selling their silver and trying to buy gold with those proceeds, which, by the way, I think is a prudent thing to do if the ratio does go that low. But be that as it may, I think that many silver stackers would sell their silver, perhaps to buy gold or pay off their mortgage or what have you. But I know that there's many ounces of silver above ground that are quantifiable, which they're not including in the World Silver Survey. So the question now becomes, why are they not including this silver? What is the point? What do they have to gain by not sharing this data with us, at least in this section here where we could all clearly see it? Well, for one, the amount of available silver above ground would be going up, not going down, if we include all of the private inventories in this list right here. So silver would not seem as good of a buy. It would not look as bullish, and that could be the exact reason they're not showing us that data. Now, I know know some of you are going to say, sure, that may be the case, but at least they're showing us the data here. At least we can see the data. But how do we know that these numbers are not skewed? How do we know that these numbers are indeed accurate? Are they not skewing this data as well? I mean, according to my calculations, with the data they've provided, there's about 2.4 billion ounces of silver that's gone into the hands of stackers in just the last 10 years. We're talking 1 decade, and stackers have bought up nearly double the amount of silver that's available on the exchanges right now. So all I'm saying is that this data is not clearly laid out, and if you are trying to be honest with how much silver is in above ground identifiable silver bullion inventories, this number here should be included at least somewhere. Maybe they don't put it right here, maybe they put it right below, you know, an estimation of how much silver the stackers themselves are holding. I don't know how exactly they would word it, but somehow that information needs to be clearly displayed when they're talking about identifiable silver bullion inventories, because they actually don't say that the silver needs to be available to purchase. Right? I mean, think about stackers that are never going to sell their silver. They're just going to hold it forever. I concede that is the case, and that silver is not available, but we also know that the silver on these exchanges that they list is not all available either. I mean, CME includes the COMEX, and the COMEX has specifically said that they're not going to sell all of their silver. They're going to settle in cash and keep a lot of the silver for themselves. So not all of this silver is available either. It is simply identifiable. And I ask you, if they were to move silver from a London vault to a vault in Chicago or New York, would that change the numbers here? Would the numbers go down? No. That wouldn't change the numbers. They're just moving the silver around. So if they move the silver from the London vault into my vault at my house, why is this changing the numbers? We've got a big problem here. Now, this issue with the World Silver Survey has been going on since the 90s. And as a stacker myself, I think it's extremely important for not only me to be able to understand how much silver is available out there, but if we are going to be running out of silver at some point, and anyone who's looking to invest in silver should have this information. I think we can all agree that some more transparency would be nice. Now, as I said in my last video, this doesn't deter me from stacking silver. The reason I stack silver is not because I think we're going to run out of silver and the price is going to spike up. I think the price probably would spike up from hyperinflation or something before that time. But look, I want to get your honest thoughts on this situation. Let me know down below in the comment section. Do you think that the World Silver Survey is purposefully skewing the numbers to make silver look more bullish, or do you think they are trying to be as honest as they can in how they present the identifiable above ground silver inventories? Please let me know down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in my next one. Silver Dragons out.